Seoul Land 210 Original Novel DouLuo DaLu. Chapter 243. Once again, the moment of Xiaowu's sacrifice. TL by Armored Raven. Right when everything seemed to go along with the follow-ups of Sealance DouLuo's golden spear thrust, an indescribable fear suddenly surged into his heart. By the time he reacted, everything was too late. The attack which even he thought he could not block without preparing himself, vanished suddenly without any signs. Right at this moment, a golden kill appeared on the side of his golden spear without a hint of imposing manner. On the shore, Tang San's eyes finally let out a trace of smile and he said faintly, "Entering the opponent's domain of unknown element is your entire battle's greatest failure." Obviously, his words were meant for Sealance DouLuo. Right when Sealance DouLuo barged into Ning Rongrong's fantasy space, Tang San's spirit power also flew in, and sensed the change's energy to the greatest degree. Indeed, Sealance DouLuo's judgment was correct. Although Tang San could determine his direction through spiritual force, he could not determine his spirit bone ability. But, when Sealance DouLuo without hesitation chose to separate his body near the sacred pillar after launching an attack, Tang San deduced that he must have had some scheme. It seemed that he intended to use the sacred pillar as a cover for his separation, but with his strength as title DouLuo, it was clear that he was still far from where he couldn't hold up his spirit avatar transformation, and doing this was moreover extremely dangerous. But Sealance DouLuo also forgot that he was inside Ning Rongrong's fantasy space. Although fantasy space wasn't an innate domain, so it couldn't be compared to Tang San's two great domains, as a spirit bone domain, its use did not simply end at letting the opponent become unable to search with spirit power. Fantasy space had but one utility, and that was confusion. Sealance DouLuo had exactly made the worst possible judgment under this domain's effect. The pressure from DouLuo Bai's attack wasn't a mistake. It was a force brought on by a true attack. But the pressure was displaced under the effect of the phantasmal domain. The force and the actual attack were effectively separated. The force and the presence came from one direction, while the actual attack came from another. Because the force came straight towards the direction of Sealance DouLuo and the sacred pillar, it completely matched the cunning of the opponent earlier, so Sealance DouLuo didn't harbor any suspicions. All of this was within Tang San's control. No matter what tricks you may use, if not on DouLuo Bai himself, then what effect would they have? DouLuo Bai's attack was launched from the side. Even Sea God DouLuo Bo Sixi would have a traumatic impact if it was taken completely without defense. Because, before the attack was launched, what Tang San ordered DouLuo Bai into his ears were, pink stimulating sausage, limit break dark green sausage, erect golden fly, take them all. Full force with white tiger transformation, added with Ning Rongrong's complete support, one could picture the attack power. If not for this, then how else would Sealance DouLuo sense that DouLuo Bai's attack power didn't pale in comparison to his 8th spirit skill? One should know that he was in existence like a purely offensive spirit master. Boom! Shattered golden light exploded from the fantasy space, and at the same time, the space itself slowly dissipated. Ning Rongrong's domain wasn't an innate domain after all, and the effect could not be kept up any longer after displacing DouLuo Bai's massive attack force. But how would it matter? The objective was achieved. DouLuo Bai and Ning Rongrong stood completely wet on the platform of Sealance's sacred pillar. Opposite of where they were, Sealance DouLuo, who separated from his spear, was panting with deep heavy breaths. He didn't fall down on the ground because he barely supported himself with his hand grabbing on the cracked spear, but the clothes on his body were stained red by blood. Tang San's words could be heard in his head. He mustered his strength and turned his head to face him. "It was you." Tang San nodded and spoke respectfully. Senior's strength was truly powerful. If faced head-on, Muo Bai and Rongrong together would definitely not be a match for you. Senior has an incomparably powerful offensive strength. Although Senior lost this battle, it was under the teamwork of 4 of us. Although Oscar didn't act, his 3 sausages gave DouLuo Bai a further buff, making the White Tiger annihilating drive's power multiply by an extra amount. Otherwise, Sealance DouLuo, who was one with his spear, would not be taken down so easily. Sealance DouLuo could not help from panting in large breaths, and each time he panted, his lips would leak blood. He was visibly and heavily wounded. He looked at Tang San unacceptably and asked, "How? How could you predict all of my attacks?" The battle just now, where he felt like he was led around by the nose, was one which he found hard to forget for life. Tang San made a calm smile. "I'm a control-type spirit master. As for the reason why, you will soon understand." At this moment, Ning Rongrong and DouLuo Bai's foreheads underwent a change. Fragmented black light merged into Dai Muebai's forehead, while Ning Rongrong's red seven-pointed star shot out a red light on Dai Muebai, then retreated back into the body. It was a sign that the completion of the fifth trial had just reached 50%. Tiger roaring exploded fresh out of Dai Muebai's mouth. Although he borrowed Tang San and Oscar's powers with Ning Rongrong in this battle, he was facing Sealan's DouLuo with just the two of them, and they had faced him at his top condition. As the one with the fiercest attack power among the 7 sacred pillar protectors, the reward he offered was definitely not scanty. Dai Muebai's spirit energy didn't just raise by half a level like Oscar's, but a whole level. With this, it would also help him reach the point of level 80. It was no wonder he could let out such an excited roar. Sealan's DouLuo now felt that his loss wasn't too unreasonable. From the angle of a fighting spirit, his Sea's lance wasn't second to Dai Muebai's White Tiger. But no one would think that the guy who appeared to be White Tiger Spirit's possessor was now at a point where he would about to reach a stage beyond 80 levels. Although he lost this battle against the opponent's control, it was the same as losing to his own underestimation. If he were to attack hard from the start, then things might have turned out differently. Dai Muebai and Ning Rongrong bowed slightly to Sealan's DouLuo at the same time. White Tiger took 9 treasure glazed tile and soared by using the sea's surface to return to their companions. Just when they reached the shore, Tang San's shoulders shook and released faint energy waves which surrounded his body. In just an eye-blinking effort, he reached the Sea's Lance sacred pillar platform. This time he released Xiaowu from his wishful 100 treasures purse directly, and he didn't even use vast sea barrier to cloak her. In Sealan's DouLuo's current state, if he couldn't protect Xiaowu then he wouldn't be Tang San. Although I didn't want to challenge Senior under such circumstances, I have no other option in order to complete the 5th trial. Please understand. Sealan's DouLuo now knew what Tang San meant earlier. Even though he was now heavily injured, he didn't show any trace of admitting his loss when seeing Tang San's golden trident brand on the forehead. Taking in a deep breath and swallowing his own blood forcefully, he worked himself up and raised the spear horizontally in his hand. Come. Let me see if you have the qualifications to accept the glory of the Sea God 9 trials. Sealan's DouLuo was obviously not as conversation-friendly as Seahorse DouLuo. He looked at Tang San in the eye with jealousy and disdain. Jealousy was due to Tang San's Sea God 9 trials of course, while disdain was more because of Tang San's choice to take this challenge now of all times. Blue and gold light flowed, and blue light which looked like waved surged out of Tang San's body. 8 spirit rings came out in a neat fashion. When Sealan's DouLuo saw the 3 rings that symbolized the highest class of red, he was completely stunned. Now he truly understood that Tang San absolutely did not count on luck to take the Sea God 9 trials. Although the opponent had 1 less spirit ring than his own and there was a sizable difference between their spirit power, but would he be able to win against this guy in front of him who had 300,000-year spirit rings while in top condition? Perhaps only that freak sea dragon would have the chance. Tang San raised his right hand to press on his own golden trident brand. At that instant, the spirit power took shape and blue light spread out, carrying not only the magnificence of Sea God's light, but also the intimidating waves of his own spirit. All the sea water near the Sea's Lance sacred pillar calmed instantaneously. As still as a blue mirror. The golden light which pierced the sky from the top of the pillar was then dimming until it vanished. Sealan's DouLuo swayed and took 2 steps back, stabilizing his own body with the spear in his hand again. Tang San didn't actually use spirit shock to attack him, but it was just an instant release of spirit aura. It was already enough to make this title DouLuo unable to stand firmly. The golden trident brand shone brightly this time. Even without Sealan's DouLuo's approval, the Sea's Lance sacred pillar's brand lit up, and its light was fused together with the one from Tang San's golden trident brand. The notification moved inside his mind, Spear of the Sea's sacred pillar, trial passed. Xiaowu's forehead also flashed a red light. Senior, are you satisfied with my answer now? Tang San looked at Sealan's DouLuo peaceful eyes. The corners of the lips turned bitterly. If there was a trace of luck in the heart earlier, then right now, Sealan's DouLuo didn't have any thoughts left. He knew that he wouldn't be able to win against the youngster in front of him no matter what. Looking at Sealan's DouLuo's lifeless look, Tang San didn't disturb him and left behind a restoration sausage. He took Xiaowu and flew, meeting up with his companions to head towards the location of the next sacred pillar. Some time after they left, Sealan's DouLuo sat collapsed on the ground, but the jealousy and disdain in his eyes were completely gone. What remained was just respect, as if he was regretting his arrogance earlier while he prayed to the sacred pillar before him. The Shrek 7 devils heard Dai Muebai before long, Wrong, up. Dai Mubai didn't revert from his spirit form, but called out to Ning Rongrong instead. He got down, hinting for her to get on his back. Ning Rongrong was startled. Boss, what are you doing? Dai Mubai chuckled, my test was over so there's nothing for me next. I wasn't too spent earlier. But you still have 2 tough battles to assist in. How are you fine with not recovering your spirit power quickly? You and little Ao get up. I'll bring you. This will save little San some time while also letting you recover more spirit power. Just keep up the good work. Although the 5th trial is an individual test, but we can still make use of group strength. Only with this, things won't be so difficult. Ma Hongjun called it quits. Boss Dai, why don't ya let me up too? I'm slow too. And I wanna save my stamina too in order to take part in the later trials. PSSH. Stop dreaming, damn fatty. Dai Mubai spoke rudely, you're a spirit saint so if you think taking a little more walk counts as consumption, then all these years were wasted on you. You wanna take advantage of me? No dice. My zoking would suit the spot much better. Oscar glanced at Ma Hongjun a little gleefully. He got up on White Tiger's back without reservations. The more he looked at that expression, the merrier he felt. He grabbed Ning Rongrong and let her sit in front of him. Little San, you wanna come up and rest too? Dai Mubai asked Tang San. Tang San shook his head and smiled, I'll pass. Even if it's walking, my spirit power will recover slowly as well. Next destination, Sea's Illusion Sacred Pillar. Sea's Illusion Sacred Pillar only had Tang San's own test. Tang San had his own thoughts about choosing it as the 3rd test. Due to his companion's help, his 5th trial's difficulty was considerably lowered. But during the battle at the Spear of the Sea Sacred Pillar earlier, Tang San had an inspiration. He realized that his spiritual force was more useful than expected after rising to the boundless level. He must put it into good use. In the next test, the title DouLuos he must truly face was just 3, and those were Sea Illusion DouLuo, Sea Star DouLuo, and Sea Dragon DouLuo. If these 3 were defeated, then the 5th trial would be passed. With the fighting style of borrowing the support of companions, Zhu Zuking and Ma Hongjun's upcoming test shouldn't be too difficult. From challenging the 5th trial until now, the amount of time passed wasn't even more than 4 hours. A large part of it was used on travel. The time spent on actual battling wasn't that much. The time spent on the first obstacle was especially little. So far, the Shrek 7 Devil's spirit power levels were as follows. Evil-Eyed White Tiger Dai Mubai, Level 80 Power Attack Type Battle Spirit Saint. Big Sausage Uncle Oscar, Level 77 Food System Tool Spirit Saint. Thousand-Handed Azura Tang San, Level 84 Control Type Battle Spirit Saint. Evil Flame Phoenix Ma Hongjun, Level 77 Power Attack Battle Spirit Saint. Soft Bones Demon Rabbit Xiao Wu, Spirit Power Unknown, Body Resistance Increased, Water Battle Ability Increased Greatly. 9 Treasure Glazed Tile Ning Rongrong, Level 77 Support Type Tool Spirit Saint. Hell Civet Zhu Zuking, Level 78 Agility Attack Type Battle Spirit Saint. Among the 7, although Oscar passed the 5th trial with just half a level reward, he trained for some time while at level 76, and reached level 77 with this half-level reward. The lowest of the Shrek 7 was also level 77. Besides Tang San and Dai Mubai who reached the stage of Spirit DouLuo, the other 5 were also heading towards that stage as well. In just a few years' time, they withstood that much pain and trained in unbearably harsh conditions, but the results were just as great. Already from common 60 to 70 levels of strength, to the point of almost 80. For ordinary spirit masters, it would be a process that could only be done in several decades. Due to Dai Mubai's spirit avatar helping them rush, everyone's traveling speed hastened a lot. In just more than an hour, they reached the next destination. The sea within the sea of the Sea's Illusion Sacred Pillar. As if expecting their arrival, when everyone came, there were yellow and purple dressed Class C spirit masters waiting outside the edges of the sea within the sea's forest, leading them to the seaside. Sea's Illusion Sacred Pillar was different from the pillars they saw before at Sea's Lance and Seahorse. While the 2 pillars were different, the sacred pillar before them was remarkably unique in form. Illusionary blue light and shadow was drifted in the middle of the sea. Faint light illuminating the sea, it looked like everything was just a cloudy haze. Under the effect of this blue smoke, it was impossible to make out what was at the center of the sea, so it was naturally just as hard to make out the basic appearance of the sacred pillar and its platform. The golden light of the other pillars that were combined in the sky came from the blue smoke. It was a given that the guardian DouLuo couldn't be seen when the pillar and its platform were unseen. For the Shrek Seven Devils, this was even more like an unknown opponent. Unknown things were often the scariest. Tang San knew that right when he truly got here, the reason why Daimyo Bai and others' trials did not include this DouLuo, was not because the DouLuo's strength wasn't enough. It was very likely that his strength was too powerful. What to do, little San? Daimyo Bai turned into human form. His spirit power consumption was extremely huge, but eating Oscar's restoration sausage made him feel not as weakened. After all, his fifth trial was already completed. Not waiting for Tang San's reply, Oscar followed up, to us, perhaps this sea illusion DouLuo is the strongest. But to little San, perhaps it's the easiest. The mist of light before us is similar to Rongrong's fantasy domain, but it counts as innate domain. However, you forgot Boss Dai, that Tang San's purple spirit eye is the bane of all illusionary domains. We can imagine that this sea illusion DouLuo's strength is mainly in domains. If the domain is ineffective, he won't be stronger than Seahorse DouLuo. Little San's victory is assured. Ma Hongjun snickered, great. Little Ao, you know how to analyze too. Oscar spoke gleefully, of course. Hearing Tang San's analysis every time would be educating. You think I'm you pig brain. Who are you calling pig brain? Ma Hongjun spoke angrily. Oscar snickered, who asks me is who? You. Ma Hongjun wanted to continue but he was interrupted by Daimyo Bai. Alright, now's not the time for playing. Don't influence little San. Oscar passed a few more sausages to Tang San again, don't save them. I still have spares. No problem. Tang San nodded and took a deep breath, then adjusted his own condition. Leaping up, he went towards the blue-colored smoke in flight. In midair, he already released his own blue-silver spirit. 8 spirit rings around his body, he barged into the opponent's domain. Oscar's analysis sounded reasonable, but Tang San understood that in reality, this challenge wasn't as easy as Oscar made it out to be. Oscar's analysis had missed a point, and that was the level of sea illusion DouLuo. Title DouLuo class domain wasn't something that could be compared to the spirit avatar level. Innate domains would be used to the greatest effect by the level of title DouLuos. Thus Tang San himself couldn't be sure if he could use his purple spirit eye to break the sea illusion DouLuo's domain skill. But just like the previous battle where Daimyo Bai and Ning Rongrong used fantasy space to win against their opponent, in order to challenge sea illusion DouLuo, he must enter the domain. Otherwise, it would be a waste of time. Entering the smoke, Tang San felt immediate changes. This didn't seem to be a mist that lingered in the air, but was like an ocean. Deep into it, Tang San even felt that his speed was slowing down as the binding of the surroundings was even more like being in under ocean as breathing felt extremely difficult. The domain's effect already took hold. In order to hurry his way here, Tang San put Xiao Wu into his storage. When the test began, he naturally let Xiao Wu out again. But just like the time when he faced Sealan's DouLuo, he also didn't use the vast sea barrier to cloak her. He just wrapped around her slender waist and floated there quietly. Tang San didn't use his purple demon eye to break the domain in haste. He just spread out his own spiritual force like a giant net inside the smoke. When the spiritual force entered the smoke, Tang San immediately felt a massive pressure. Compared to detection in the air, the smoke in front of him posed more than 10 times the resistance. The spiritual force spreading was slow, and the things detected were in a great blur. Meanwhile, Tang San's spiritual force was like it attracted the keys of the smoke. With the prodding of the spiritual force, the blue mist around him moved faster. Tang San only felt that the scenery in front of him changed as all the smoke disappeared, yet below his feet it felt like there was a solid ground. He was then in a large forest. A red light flashed, Xiao Wu's soul had returned to her body. Looking around, she spoke in shock, Isn't this the Star Do Great Forest? Tang San was shaken, are you sure? Xiao Wu nodded and said, of course. I lived for many years in Star Do Great Forest, and I knew every grass and wood clearly. But this isn't just Star Do Great Forest, and it's... Just when she said that, figures of people appeared suddenly, and it was 9 of them in amazing speed. They surrounded Tang San and Xiao Wu in almost an instant. The first one's entire body was in roiling flames. His appearance was so familiar to Tang San and Xiao Wu. He was one of the 3 in the Spirit Hall's golden generation. Coming with him, were 8 powerful spirit saints who had 7 spirit rings each. Run! Why aren't you running? He stared at Tang San's face fiercely as he growled. Tang San and Xiao Wu were stunned. This scene was all too familiar to them. Wasn't this the very scene where Tang San was caught up while he had to rescue Xiao Wu inside Star Do Great Forest? Because of the people in front of them, Tang San attempted to use his life to let Xiao Wu escape, but she sacrificed herself to save him instead, thus becoming Tang San's spirit ring and spirit bone. Even if he were to be turned to ashes, Tang San would never forget that scene carving on his bones and etched on his heart. His dull eyes turned colder and colder, uncontrollable killing intent surged like a raging torrent. Even when Tang San was calm and wise, when this scene played out before him once more, his world in his mind was going insane. Xiao Wu shivered, for she clearly felt that Tang San was letting out an indescribably terrifying aura. Gee, don't be rash. This is an illusion. In comparison, Xiao Wu was much calmer. But for Tang San, so what if it was an illusion? Xiao Wu was his sore spot. Moreover, this scene before him was one he regretted for the rest of his life. If not because of being attacked by 8 spirit saints, why else would Xiao Wu sacrifice herself? If not because of yearning heartbroken red holding Xiao Wu's life force in place, then he and Xiao Wu would truly have been eternally separated. Bone-piercing killing intent poured out from Tang San's heart like a torrent. The temperature around the realm plummeted rapidly as Tang San's eyes slowly turned blood red in color. He even pulled Xiao Wu into this embrace in a crude manner, holding her slender figure tightly. His lips clenched into a straight line. No one can hurt my Xiao Wu again. Not even in illusion. In the next moment, Tang San moved. His whole being lunged out like a whirlwind. His speed was so frightening, as the 8 spider lances broke out of his back, he went so fast he tore off the skin of his own back, spraying blood all over. But this didn't matter for Tang San. He wanted to tear everything in front of him apart. The 8 spirit saints attacked Tang San almost at the same time, but in just an instant, their eyes lost Tang San's figure. He passed through their front in the flash of red light. Of the attacks made by 8 spirit saints, 6 of them were evaded while 2 of them landed on Tang San's back. The force of the attacks were actually the exact same as the situation back then, but Tang San remained on the ground and even maintained a stance. The next moment, sounds of shattering were made as he turned into dozens of fragments which flew in many directions. Behind his corpse, Tang San's left leg carried a blood-colored after-shadow. Just a shine, he used his 100,000-year evil left leg spirit bone skill Orca Fang Buster to cut apart the corpse. Without stopping, Tang San moved again. In this moment, his speed even exceeded that of same-level agility attack-type spirit masters. He didn't even seem to feel the attacks of the 2 spirit sages that hit him before. The 8 spider lances braced against the ground, and he shot forward. Countless blue-silver emperors surged out from the ground, 10,000-year spirit skill, blue-silver prison, activated. The current blue-silver prison wasn't the same as the blue-silver prison back then. Under the effects of a level 84 Tang San's spirit power, every blue-silver emperor was so durable even spirit avatar spirit sages would not be able to guarantee an instant escape. Next, a circle of red light surrounded Tang San as it burst out, causing the air around to stop completely before turning into a solid crystal, locking everything in place. The 8 spirit saints were stuck in a struggling state as they were locked inside the crystal body made of frozen air. Die! Tang San growled with near insanity and an explosive sound came as it shattered. The bodies inside the crystal were shattered along with the crystal, turning into countless chunks of flesh which blew up in mid-air, dyeing this originally green forest red in almost an instant. Tang San's 8th spirit ability's first technique, crowd restraining certain kill move, blue-silver, evil spirit, mirrors destruction. Even when he faced Xiao Bai, he didn't use this technique all the way as he just used the mirror part of it to lock Xiao Bai's movement in seawater. This 8th spirit skill's first technique could temporarily turn air, water, or any matter into a mirror-like crystal. Shatter the crystal body, and everything within the area of effect would shatter and perish. Unless the opponent was already strong enough to withstand the frightening tearing force of this technique, then otherwise, death would be guaranteed. It was an extremely brutal technique which resembled evil Orca King's style in a great way. Though it was all an illusion before his eyes, but, even if the lives of the 8 spirit saints were exchanged, the result wouldn't change. They would still be torn to pieces all the same. The mad attack demonstrated Tang San's true strength, and just like then, Xiao Wu buried her head into Tang San's embrace. Feeling Tang San's cold, brutal, and terrifying killing intent only made her feel warm. She didn't remind her man that this was an illusion again. Because she knew Tang San's state of mind right now, that if he didn't vent, then it would be worse for him. At the same time she believed that her man would take control of this situation completely. Feeling the shattering of surroundings, Tang San's chest throbbed heavily. Using his spirit bone skill and 8th spirit skill consecutively was a pretty large consumption for him. The consumption which 100,000-year spirit ring skill could pose was undoubtedly terrifying. Along with all the shattering, the scenery changed again. This time, Tang San and Xiao Wu seemed to become bystanders, and appearing before them was a scene which raised the killing intent from his calm yet again. In their eyes, there was another Tang San and Xiao Wu, who appeared to be much greener than they were now. The 9 people who were shredded were once again in the scene. The Xiao Wu in the scene was in mid-air, with a sharp sad ear-piercing scream, ah from her mouth. Her eyes were no longer shedding tears, but blood. The Tang San in the scene had lost his right leg, which disappeared in the air completely. But he himself was scarily calm. When he was spitting out blood, his right hand seized the shimmering blue leg bone from the mist of blood that came from his missing leg, while his spirit power was pouring out uncontrollably. Turning around fiercely, he didn't even look at the 3 attacks that came from behind, and threw the leg bone straight at Xiao Wu in great force. Xiao Wu, spirit bone skill flight, run! The Tang San in the scene had completely lost his voice, like it was torn apart. He put every ounce of strength in himself and put it all into this throw. At the same time, his left hand grabbed a fragment of the 8 spider spear, and stabbed it deep into his own heart. Wasn't this scene exactly the one where Tang San sacrificed himself in order to save Xiao Wu? Looking at this scene as an outsider, Xiao Wu's body couldn't help but tremble. That moment when she was about to lose Tang San had once again spread throughout her body. Unable to control her own tears, she cried out while locking her hands on Tang San's body. The scene did not end, and everything resumed. Xiao Wu in this scene let out an unbearably sharp cry, ah. The sharpness of the cry was like it could shake the entire Star Do Great Forest. Ends here. Likes okay, comment okay, write anything. Today 4 episodes, this is last, haha, 6 more to go. Good luck always.